Welcome to our Women in Technology seminar today. We're all about helping out each other, both women and men in the PASS community. You can see our goals on the slide there. There's no tool for development more effective than the empowerment of women. That's one of the quotes that we have on our site and what we believe in. And we're all about networking, mentoring, and we also have a lot of fun meeting at things like PASS Summit and SQL Saturday. We'd really like to shout out to Century One and thank them for sponsoring our chapter. Because of Century One, we'll be able to give away a $50 gift card to Amazon today from one of the attendees. So I have chosen a name, drew a number based on who was in a particular position when the webinar started, and I will send a chat to that person letting them know that they've won. And then if they do, then they'll get it through email from PASS. They'll get that gift card information. You can find all of our webinars on our YouTube channel, and also on our homepage we have listings of all the webinars coming up. We have some resources for having a WIT-related session at a SQL Saturday. We have links to all of our videos, quite a bit of information out there. We also feature upcoming women speakers at SQL Saturday and other events, so be sure to check out our page. We really would like you to belong to our virtual chapter. If you are a member, you will get our monthly newsletter, and a lot of people really enjoy reading that, so we appreciate the support. And you can follow us on Twitter. This month, we are celebrating International Women's Month, and we have sessions one every week. Today is Wendy Pastrick, and we've got Erin Stellato and Kaylin Delaney, and also Ree Irish. So Ree is the co-leader of this chapter. I'm not sure if I said at the beginning, I'm Kathy Kellenberger, so Ree and I are the leaders of the chapter. Here's a list of some of the SQL Saturdays, the women speakers just next week. And we have one of our members keeps track of all these, gathers this information for us. You can find it on our site. I'm just really thrilled about the representation of women at these events. And I think we're really getting some acknowledgement for our work finally. These are the webinars that we have coming up, the continuing of that series of Women's Month. Today's session is titled Moving Past Imposter Syndrome by Wendy Pastrick, and this imposter syndrome affects just about everybody, I think. I know it bothers me quite a bit. But she's going to talk about how to overcome this, not just what it is. So that will be great. Wendy is from Chicago, Illinois, and for the past 15 years she served as a database administrator supporting both development and production environments. Her many years of involvement with PASS include the WIT virtual chapter and the Chicago Suburban User Group, serving as regional mentor, and she's been a PASS board member since 2013. Wendy has organized several SQL Saturday events, and I know for a fact that she travels to many of those SQL Saturday events to present as well. So Wendy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Kathy.
All right.
15 years. Oh, I gotta go back to saying I've been doing things, since a certain time, because oh man, that just starts adding up after a while.
Yeah, I know what you mean. All right, and oh, I forgot to say about questions. If you have questions for Wendy, go ahead and type them in as we go, and I will stop Wendy when it looks like there's a couple of questions, and we'll take them as we go. So take it away.
All right. How's it look?
I see it. I see your slide.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, great.
Go ahead.
Thanks everybody for taking some time out of your day today to talk about something that has come up very frequently in the last several years has an awful lot of visibility, especially in the technical community, and especially when talking with women and people in minority groups in technology, this idea of imposter syndrome. So I'm taking a little bit of a different spin on it today. I'm happy to take your questions as we go through. Kathy's moderating, so I can't see the questions, but she'll be able to pop in and let me know. So you want the chat window, I think is the best place to do that. All right, so Kathy, thanks for saying some nice things about me, but I have been working with Microsoft SQL Server since the year 2000, mostly supporting development groups, so I work very closely with coders and people working in development roles as well as project management roles. I have worked for several different consulting firms recently, so I've got about 5 years of consulting experience under my belt as well. Thanks to Microsoft for recognizing me as an MVP since the year 2013. And I've also been on the past board of directors since that time, so I'm in my third term now doing that. I'm currently working with educational content, so it's a new role on the board, and it should be very challenging for me. But currently I work for a little company called Salesforce where I'm a database performance engineer, so all of the developers and all the code that comes through, I get to give it the stamp of approval. I get to help architect new things that are up and coming, and just be a general mentor to not only people on my team, but people in various development teams as well. So that's me a little bit. All right, so in case you are not familiar, let's just start off with a little level set here on what exactly is this thing called imposter syndrome. And this is, straight textbook definition here, a concept that describes high-achieving individuals who are marked by an inability to internalize their accomplishments and a persistent fear of being exposed as a fraud. So I'm sure that there's probably many of you listening who have come across this feeling before. I know that I certainly have in the past. There's certainly been times where I've gone and thought, oh my gosh, how did I get this amazing job that I have? I'm not nearly as smart as the other people in the room. What's going to happen when, I can't deliver on something? They're going to find me out. I'm going to get that crazy question that I have no idea how to answer, and it's all going to, my house of cards is all going to come tumbling down. Right, and this is a big thing that often is noted as holding people back from achieving more, and it's that inability to give yourself that pat on the back and say, yeah, you know what, I'm pretty good at what I do, and that's good. So self-doubt, right? But it's more than just that self-doubt, So this is Jack Kerouac here, always thinking, what am I doing here? Is this the way I'm supposed to feel? So, constantly questioning yourself is part of what people also label as imposter syndrome. Okay, but I think that in the grand scheme of, there's many blog posts out there about, oh my gosh, I suffer from imposter syndrome. We see it, like I said, especially written from the perspective of women in technical roles, but we also see it, written by men, and, not to discount that at all, because, anyone can suffer, from feelings of inadequacy in many different facets of their life. And when we're specifically talking about something in the technical community, we're looking at, okay, well, was I able to use the best methodology in that code to achieve the answers that I wanted? Or, did I do that in such a remedial way that now I look stupid? How do I, continue to learn and continue to improve and do all this great stuff? Well, there's a woman who wrote, oops, who wrote an article, several articles, Alicia Liu, and I have some links to her blog posts and things in the back. And she had a very interesting experience, and I'm actually going to reference that, and I think if I am, okay, there we go. I didn't want to lose my slide there. So she attended a professional conference and sat on a woman in technology panel where, people were talking about how, oh, well, it's imposter syndrome. The reason that I'm not doing as well in my job is, imposter syndrome. And it was kind of a moment of clarity that hit her, while she's sitting on this panel and thinking, well, wait a minute, maybe there's really more to it than just this imposter syndrome, because I don't think that that's necessarily fair to immediately point to yourself all the time, that, you're the problem, or, it's your fault that you're not doing better, and that kind of thing. Which, when you start questioning yourself, you go down a path, right, of how did I get here? I'm sitting here in this role, I'm doing this job. Do I really belong here? Is this really where I belong? Did I do something wrong? Okay, I don't know why it's not letting me go back to my slide. Sorry. There we go. Okay. So we always have this then feeling of, okay, well, we'll just fake it till we make it, right? So that's, yeah, again, something that does us kind of a disservice, if you will, because are you really faking it? And this is where I want to challenge you as an audience member listening today to think about external factors that come into play as you're going through your day, right? So sometimes, honestly, you just really don't know something, and that's okay. No one expects everyone to have all of the answers to all of the questions immediately available in the front lobe of their brain so that it can be, spit out at any given moment, right? And recognizing that you are able to learn new skills or find answers to questions that you don't know the answer is extraordinarily valuable. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're fearing that, oh my gosh, I'm going to get those stump the chump questions and I don't know how to answer them, that's okay. What you need to work on is you need to work on a way to present yourself or present an answer in such a way that, you're admitting, okay, I don't really know the answer to that right now, but I will very shortly. So giving yourself that amount of credit, okay? Then there's also, confidence issues, right? So the problem with confidence is that can be a two-way street. So if we continue to look at this fake it till you make it ideal, right, then that's a problem too, because overconfidence can be just as bad as a lack of confidence. If someone, you've probably met these people too, right? You get into a meeting, oh, that person sitting across the table from you, they have all the answers, this is how we're going to solve this problem. I've got a project plan already in place for that, bada bing, bada bam, bada boom, this is how it's going to happen. Yeah, maybe. There's certainly been situations where, that has happened to me. I'm sitting in there, I hear somebody say that, and you think, okay, well, here we go. It's time for the roller coaster. Because, yeah, it might have been, something that's a viable solution to the problem we're trying to solve. Is it going to play out exactly the way that person envisioned it? No, because you're going to end up going back into more meetings. There's going to be scope creep in your requirements. There's, there's a whole process that has to happen, right? So when you find yourself confronted by these kind of people, And you're reflecting that upon yourself. You're like, oh, why didn't I come up with that great idea? Or, how come I wasn't the one who had that solution immediately available? I must not be good enough. Yeah, it's okay. Take a step back and think, okay, well, yeah, their idea might be good, but there's probably more to it, okay? Any commentary so far, Miss Kathy? Everybody's real quiet. I'll take that as a no. Go ahead.
No questions yet.
Okay, all right.
myself very quickly there. Okay, I'll let you know.
I put you on the spot too quickly there. Sorry about that. All right. All right. So the other thing that I want people to take away from today is to make sure that, not only are we looking at ourselves, reflecting internally, but we're kind of also, or not kind of, but we're also taking into account, other things that might be going on, okay? Another topic that has been coming more and more to the forefront lately is this concept of gaslighting. Now, cannot take gaslighting lightly, and I'm not trying to be tongue-in-cheek with it here, because it is a very serious problem, and typically we think of gaslighting when we're talking about personal relationships. So, in your in your personal life, if someone is trying to basically brainwash you into thinking that you are less than what you are, okay? So while your day-to-day job might not necessarily, fall into this category of, the official definition of gaslighting, there are some things that come up and can make you feel like, you are not just second-guessing yourself, but you're starting to believe that you aren't that person that you thought you were. And this is where really the biggest problems, I think, come with trying to put this generic label or trying to make imposter syndrome a more generic label for other things that might actually be going on in reality, okay? So, come on, slides. So there's this myth of, meritocracy, right? You can put in all the hours, that you possibly, can. It doesn't matter how hard you're going to work. It's just never going to be good enough, okay? Or, you could put together the best presentation and the best idea forward, but it doesn't matter because you're not going to make it work anyway, all right? Or even worse, you have this amazing idea and other people take the credit for it. They just walk off with it, right? If these are types of things that are actually happening, then it is not imposter syndrome, okay? These are other people being complete horrible people and doing things that are not cool, all right? So we need to make sure that, when we find ourselves in certain situations that we're looking around and we're really taking stock of, what else is going on around us, okay? How about some environmental factors, okay? That other people are ignoring your contributions or your suggestions. If you're just outright being ignored, that does not mean that you are suffering from imposter syndrome, okay? It could be that, all right, maybe your idea wasn't great, and that's okay. But if you have management or coworkers who just completely ignore the things that you bring to the table, then that's certainly a problem, okay? And trying to compensate for that with putting in extra hours, always being the one that stays late, that's a problem too. I used to work with a woman in the insurance industry. This is back before I became a technical professional. We worked for a company that sold corporate insurance policies, so selling business insurance to places, and she was the only woman who was one of the top sales reps in the company, and her desk was always so piled high with pamphlet with file folders and client information, and she was always going out to meetings, constantly just trying to make sure that, her clients were confident that she was giving them the best service possible. And she would work until 8 or 9 o'clock every single night, and she'd come in on weekends. That, unfortunately, was not effective at all. What ends up happening is you end up setting then a totally new set of expectations for your performance. You are now putting in so much more than everybody else doing the same type of role that is your new normal. And then your management expects that to be your new normal. And I have to say that this particular story has a sad ending too, because she was eventually let go because she lost a certain percentage of her clients. Didn't seem to matter that she had an awful lot more, her overall number of clients was so much more significant than several of the other, they call them producers at the company. And, and as soon as she stopped working on Saturdays, and as soon as she stopped, coming in and staying for 12 to 14 hours a day, the appearance that her work was suffering was what was seen, and that's not right. Totally not right. So I'd like to read a couple quotes really quickly for you here, and these are from some of the blog posts that I reference at the end of the presentation. There's a woman named Kate Hudson, and she says, "What we call imposter syndrome often reflects the reality of an environment that tells the marginalized groups that we shouldn't be confident, that our skills aren't enough, that we won't succeed, and when we do, our accomplishments won't even be attributed to us. Yet imposter syndrome is treated as a personal problem to be overcome, a distortion in processing, rather than a realistic reflection of the hostility, discrimination, and stereotyping that pervades tech culture." I think that's a really powerful statement. Here we are, oftentimes saying, that my success is due, my apparent lack of success is due to imposter syndrome and not something else that might be going on. The other quote that I'd like to share with you is from Alexis Hancock, and she is a Black woman in tech. And she says, "It's a badge of honor to stay up doing midnight releases and drink absurd amounts of coffee. Portraying the image of the burdened genius is way more accepted than admitting that you are burnt out from settling bugs all day and that you don't want to look at code when you get home. With the cloud of imposter syndrome hovering over me, I convinced myself that I did not work hard enough to deserve a moment to relax. Instead of putting the laptop down, I was focused on learning everything I could in my free time. I began to suffer from more frequent anxiety attacks, weight gain, and an overall clouded state of mind." Now again, I reference her entire blog post at the end, and I encourage you to take those links and read them at your leisure, because these are serious issues. They're very important, and we can't just put a blame on ourselves 100%. And we can't just put, a convenient label on things as well.
Wendy,
right. Yes.
I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how can we avoid getting rolled over by our team members once they find that we don't look confident? You have an idea for that?
Yeah, and an appearance, it's kind of one of those things, right? I brought up fake it till you make it earlier as a negative, but there are times when, even when you're not feeling confident, you still have to appear confident. Mm-hmm. And I think, what we're talking about there falls into a category of human nature, right? So are you more likely to go to a doctor who mumbles and, kind of sort of does an exam, or do you prefer to go to a doctor who, has a good personality and will ask you, about, oh, well, how are things at home, and, be genuinely interested in you? And I think that's the same the same type of thing translates, to being in a situation with your coworkers, right? If you present yourself in such a way that you're not putting yourself forward to earn their respect, then they're not going to respect you. And if that is confidence related, then I highly recommend finding some tools to help you work on your confidence. Confidence does go a long way. As we talked about before, overconfidence can be really bad, or just as bad as low self-esteem or low confidence. So there is a happy medium there. But I think the best thing to do is recognize that you are not as confident as you probably could be or maybe even want to be, and work on that.
And there's a great book called The Confidence Code.
Right, yeah.
I love that book. I have another question for you.
Okay.
Suggestions that Wendy can offer for getting back in balance and setting correct expectations with your team. So after you've been working overtime and weekends, how can you correct that without that bad thing happening to you?
It's a hard one, right?
Yeah.
There's probably multiple ways to go about it. I don't know that just scaling back slowly, might be a slightly less impactful, or, have a perception of slightly less impactful negativity there. So, if you're working till 8 o'clock every night, maybe for a week you start only working till 7 o'clock at night, and then the next week you only work till 6, and then, eventually you've scaled it back so that, you're not spending all those extra hours there. The thing, though, that makes it key isn't so much the time that you're putting in, it's the quality of work that you're producing. If you can still do the work that is necessary to achieve the goals by the dates given, then that is all that is really required, right? So if you can continue to deliver at the same level by working smarter and not more, I don't want to say harder because it's not really harder, it's just longer. Yeah, instead of working longer, work smarter, and continue to display the level of quality, then no one will question your integrity or your ability.
Thank you.
I apologize for the dogs in the background. I tried to give them a snack and put them away, but I'm that person. I'm sorry, you have dogs.
All right, that's all the questions for now.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so Robert Weiss, licensed social worker. Just one last word here on the gaslighting is that sadly in the psychiatric community and in social work and psychology, what is the truth here is that even people who are incredibly intelligent and emotionally healthy can be gaslighted. And like I said, I'm not trying to take gaslighting lightly, but it is something that does still happen, even in not social, but in a corporate setting. There's this idea of what's happening in my office. If I'm actively being told that I didn't do good enough, then am I really not doing good enough, or are they wrong? And that's where this gaslighting concept is. It's extremely powerful, and it's very detrimental. Very detrimental. Okay. So here's it's not exactly gaslighting, but it's kind of an easy way to look at it. And I'm sure most of you have probably seen this cartoon, but it's the two guys standing at the chalkboard, and it's like, wow, you suck at math. And then it's a guy and a girl standing at a chalkboard, and the guy says to the girl, girls suck at math. It's like, well, why do you have to single out that it's a girl who sucks at math. You know, it's the same math problem, it's done the same. And I think having the self-awareness to be able to call out those types of situations is one of those difficult things to do, but it's necessary, right? So, you know, even for an example, you know, in my day-to-day life, you know, I've caught, you know, my husband saying things to the kids, right? And I have a son and I have a daughter. And sometimes he'll say things differently to my son than he says it to my daughter, and I'll call him out on it. And, you know, fortunately that works out, right? Because, you know, we communicate enough that, you know, it's not a problem. But I think people often don't realize sometimes when they're doing things. And being unintentional sometimes is just as bad as being intentional. And we'll get to more of that in just a minute here. Okay. So I want you to think about things in your life, and especially at work. So more so at work. And ask yourself, is it really me? Because there are things such as discrimination, racism, sexism, oppression, marginalized groups. These things do exist. There is no doubt in anyone's mind that absolutely every single one of these things are things that different people and different groups of people may experience on an individual basis or on a group basis or in combination with each other. And we need to recognize those things, okay? So, you know, it does. It sucks when you don't feel like you're good enough, okay? And how do you know if it's you or not, right? So just some quick definitions here, because I think people confuse, you know, it's easy to see that, you know, these things like, oh, they overlap or they get confused with each other sometimes. But so discrimination is unjust or prejudiced treatment of different categories of people or things when you look at race, age, or sex. Okay, so racism and sexism are a type of discrimination, right? Racism being specific prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism against someone of different race based on the belief that someone else's own race is superior. And sexism, similarly, is prejudice, stereotyping, discrimination, and typically more often against women, but not always, and it's based on gender. Okay. Whereas a marginalized group, you can be marginalized as a person or a group, but concepts can also be marginalized as insignificant or peripheral. So it's like, you don't matter. Okay. So for the person who asked about, you know, not being seen as confident enough, you know, are you being marginalized, or are you really suffering, you know, from confidence issues? Okay. And then finally, with oppression, the state of being subject to unjust treatment or controls. Okay, so, you know, are you expected now to work until 8 o'clock every night when no one else is? Then that's oppression. That's not imposter syndrome. You know, if you're being held to different standards than other people, you're either being marginalized or oppressed. Okay. So don't let yourself be controlled by people, money, or past experiences. Well, Wendy, how in the heck is that supposed to happen? Because aren't we, you know, as we mature and as we go through life, I mean, that's what makes us who we are, right? Is the past experiences that we've had, okay? I think the point of this is that don't let it control you. You should be the one in control. You always have a choice. As human beings, we are afforded the freedom of choice. And one of the biggest things that I have always subscribed to in raising my children and, you know, learning more about myself as I get older is that you do always have a choice. You don't always have to like the choices that you're offered, but you always do have a choice. Doing nothing is also a choice. And when you're conscious of what choices are you making and why you made them, then you cannot be controlled by those past experiences. Okay. Now, I know people who have been through, really bad health problems, okay, seemingly overcoming, and somewhere, somehow, by luck or by chance or by medicine or by sheer will, they manage to make it through. And when you talk to them today, something that happened maybe 2 or 3 years ago, it doesn't control them. It's a certain factor in who they are today, but it doesn't control them. And that's the key. So don't let other people tell you what to think. Don't let other people tell you how to behave. Make it a conscious decision for yourself, okay? And then, the money thing, well, some people just follow the money. I did it for years. I followed the money. I'm like, hey, I'm in this job. I'm doing this work. This other person over there looks like they're doing the same job and getting paid more than I am. So I'm going to go find another job, and I'm going to go make money like they're making. And unfortunately, it didn't bring my life joy. Following the money, yeah, it paid the bills, but it was a rat race, and it didn't further my career the way that I had hoped. It didn't make me a happier person. It didn't necessarily make me a person that other people wanted to be around all the time. So these are things that we shouldn't. We should be aware of these outside factors. We should be aware of things like discrimination and oppression, and make sure that we know, is this something that I'm allowing to happen to me, or that I'm noticing is happening to me, versus, oh, well, I just don't have enough self-confidence, and I've got imposter syndrome. Okay. And this is where we start to think about things like cause and effect.
Would you like another question?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Okay, I got one for you. Is it okay to go for lunch or dinner with your team members if you think they will take advantage of your lenient nature? I'm not sure how that fits in, but maybe you can see how it fits in with this.
I guess I don't really quite understand the question.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure how going to lunch and being lenient connect. I'm sorry.
Okay. So
if that person could clarify their question a little bit.
Okay. We'll let you go ahead and go on, and then at the next interval, we'll try again if she has some more information. Thanks.
Okay. Yep. So, talking about, cause and effect here, it's not always that the people are doing things intentionally, but the effect is the same, whether someone intended to marginalize you or oppress you, or, they are being racist or sexist. They might not realize it. And I would say that it's not always your job to call out an individual, but calling out a particular set of behaviors is okay, right? And being able to recognize that, maybe somebody didn't quite mean to, scare you so that you ran and hid, but you did, right? So they should somehow be aware that, you can call out behaviors without placing blame. It is definitely possible to let someone know, hey, what happened there really hurt my feelings or really made me uncomfortable, and it's not necessarily confronting them and telling them they're a bad person, but it's more of putting yourself forward and saying, this is how I deserve and expect to be treated. So how are we doing, Kathy?
I have another question, but it may be similar.
Okay.
How do you handle a situation where you're getting marginalized by offshore teams, especially when your boss has told you to give more work to the offshore team?
Mm.
So,
Well, um, there have been times that I have definitely worked with offshore teams, and it 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 comes across as when I get work from when I've had times when work has come in from them, that they almost have this like sense of entitlement of, well, I'm not going to take any feedback that you have based on what I've given you, because I obviously know what I'm doing, and I have enough experience, and I know my code works, and all of that, right? And I think it's a really tricky situation, right? Because you don't have that opportunity to have a face-to-face conversation. These things often end up coming across, via email, and there's that delay, right? So there's no instant um, remediation in those types of situations. If you are in such a position where you have the ability to say to them something of the effect of, it seems like it seems that we're having some issues with our communication. I'd like to work through this with you. I always try to turn things into either a mentoring or learning experience. And that has been very successful for me, because people don't like to hear that they're wrong, right? And sometimes I will come back and phrase things in such a way of, hey, I see you did this thing this way. Can you explain to me why you went that route, or why you made those choices? And that's usually a nice introduction of getting that conversation started, because you're likely feeling the marginalization due to that the lack of interaction. I think once people start communicating with each other and start building that rapport with one another, those types of things can be overcome. Okay, and that's been my personal experience with that.
cool. Thanks. That is all for right now then.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Bottom line, everyone, you should be having fun. You deserve to have fun. You deserve to enjoy your life. You deserve to take pride in your work. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be happy. I can't stress that enough. There's going to be times when things are tough and things are crap, and that's okay. But overall, if you look back at your week, or you look back at the day you had, well, the week or whatever, or the month you had, were you happy more often than not? Then that's great. That's great. Okay. So I love this. I love this quote. I think it's great. It's because this is how we all feel, right? I'm running around. I'm doing all this crazy stuff. Oh my gosh, my life is so complicated. I have work to handle. I have my family to handle, or I have my hobbies to handle. All these things going on in my life. Things really should be easier, right? Did I make this more complicated than it needs to be? Looks like everyone else is having a good time. How do they have time to do those fun things? How come I'm not there too? That's a hard one. It's a real hard one. There's another quote out there. I don't even know who to attribute it to, honestly, but it's kind of to the effect of, you will make time for the things that you find important in your life. If you have not made time for it, then it's not important enough to you to do it. So focus on, what things do you really want? What is going to make you, what's going to give you that sense of accomplishment and that sense of joy in your life? Because you deserve it. Find those things, make the time for that, and focus on those things as well. And I probably should put this slide at the end, because it's like such an uplifting, fun slide. All right. So let's take a look, and this is another Alicia Liu that I have pulled off of her website. Here's reality, folks. Okay. So if you really are suffering from imposter syndrome, this is what you feel like, right? You feel like you know a little bit about something and everybody else thinks that you know a whole lot about that something, when really, taking a slightly different view of that is much healthier, right? Because what you know fills up an entire bubble. That is what you know. It's big. It's everything you know. And everything other people know, also, they have their own bubbles too. And there's an intersection, right? Because we're all geeks and, we like math. So, hey, look, Venn diagram, yay. We have an intersection of what I know and what other people know. And there's always going to be things that other people know that I don't. And accepting that reality and having the confidence to know that, oh yeah, you know what, if I realize that there's something I'm not good at or that I wasn't aware of before, now that I am, I can learn more about it, or I can find answers to questions. I am a very capable person of doing that in my life. Okay? So that self-doubt that we talked about in the beginning, yeah, it happens, okay? But don't tell yourself that you have full-blown imposter syndrome when really having a little bit of self-doubt isn't such a bad thing. It keeps us learning. It keeps us growing. It keeps us moving forward, okay? Another thing that I learned years and years ago is there's the things you know, there's the things you don't know, but the worst things are the things that you don't know that you don't know. So when you become aware of things that you didn't know about before, it's an opportunity, right? It's those, oh, well, I didn't even know that was something. I didn't even know I didn't know that thing. That's the hardest one to accept. But being able to, have my bubble of the things I know and the things I know I don't know, now I'm a pretty powerful person because I know how to get the answers to those other things. Okay? So having that little bit of self-doubt is okay. It continues to allow us to grow. And then, to kind of wrap this up, I want to share a few very recent examples with you all of some things that I've read just in the last few days, honestly. This one was from a friend of mine on Facebook who, is all excited about SQL on Linux, and hey, and it's like, oh, the irony. Haven't written a blog post in months because I think much of the SQL on Linux stuff is too basic. And then I run across all of you newcomers and your numerous posts on the topic. How to log in, how to update, how to check running processes. And, this is great. I think this is so perfect of, how we feel like, well, I didn't have enough. It wasn't deeply technical enough to post. It wasn't completed enough. But just putting the information out there, this person is obviously a regular blogger, so they were feeling like, oh, well, I got to put out this amazing post about SQL on Linux or nobody's going to read it. When the reality is that people want to learn new stuff. And it doesn't matter, how little or how insignificant it may seem, it's okay to go ahead and post that. A couple years ago, I was building some stuff in Azure, and I came across, I didn't realize that I had learned in doing this setup that, oh, well, storage is kind of separate from some of this other stuff. So I wrote a quick blog post about how, hey, don't be overwhelmed by the storage, here's how it kind of lays out. Anybody else that had my same experience would have learned that too, but it was okay to go ahead and post that. And that blog post got a ton of views. And it was something so very simple. All right. The other one I have is another friend of mine was recently awarded an MVP. And this person had, over several days prior had posted about how, imposter syndrome seems to really affect them. And so my response was, well, hey, stick that in your imposter syndrome hat, And here's the response I got. Okay, so, well, basically saying, my imposter syndrome is only going to get worse once I join some, distribution lists, so, because now I'm in this bigger pond now with all these really smart people who are also MVPs. So now I'm going to feel even more like an imposter. When really, I would encourage this person to make sure that they're focusing on their accomplishments instead. And thinking about, well, what are the things that you do know and what are you good at? Because those are the things that earned you the MVP, not the things you don't know. All right. Doing okay, Kathy?
No questions right now, except we've had comments that they like, especially that slide, the reality slide, and a couple other comments that some of the people liked some of the questions that came up. So some good things.
Great.
So that's it for right now.
All right. Well, I only have a couple more things here. So kind of wrapping this up now, moving it forward. Wherever you are in your career or your personal life right now, I encourage you to do nothing but believe in yourself. There is something that you have to contribute, no matter how small it may seem or insignificant it might feel. There is something for you to contribute. And then I always like the unicorn. Hey, my friend told me I was delusional and I almost fell off my unicorn. Believing in yourself, okay? If you're the kind of person who believes that, you ride a unicorn all day long, there's nothing wrong with that. Another very strange tidbit here, when I was in high school, I wasn't necessarily a real popular kid, but some of the people that I hung out with, we all were a little strange in our own way. But I remember this one girl who was, a friend, and she would always tell people she was from Venus. She's like, oh, well, I'm not an Earthling, I'm a Venusian, And, first you're like, oh, yeah, haha, that's really funny. And then, the longer you got to know her and the more, the more you hung out with her and everything, I was like, wow, I really think she really does believe she's a Venusian. Like, this is really weird, this is kind of interesting. But it didn't make her any less of a person. It didn't change who she who she was. It didn't change how fun our interactions were when we got together, or when we would go hang out and go see a movie or something. It was great. She was herself, and I think that's what ultimately attracted people to her. Not that she had some weird, crazy, potential strangeness that she was from Venus instead of Earth, but that she was just a fun person to hang out with, and who cares if she had this other idea too. So, all right. So I will leave this up here. I think that really what I should probably put up here is that you should look up Alicia Liu, but you can see that her Twitter handle there is Alicia Tweet, and she has quite a few really good articles out there, and it was reading through her stuff that actually inspired me to put this presentation together. So I'd like to give her an awful lot of credit. And then at the end down there, there's an article, 21 Ways to Overcome Imposter Syndrome. So if you are, truly and honestly, you've looked at your external factors and you've determined that, like, no, I'm the one holding myself back, and I really need to find ways to overcome this imposter syndrome. There's this that 21 ways to overcome imposter syndrome there, and honestly, if you do a quick web search, you're going to come up with like 100 articles on overcoming imposter syndrome as well. And the point today was to move past imposter syndrome, to make sure that that's really what's going on in your experience everyone you give yourself that label. So, Kathy, thank you so much for having me, and thanks to everyone who joined in.
Thank you, Wendy. If you send the slides, we can go ahead and upload that on our site, and people will be able to get to those links easier. And other comments, just this is excellent, and I agree too. You've got a complete different take on this topic than I've really seen before. So a lot to think about here.
Yep.
Yeah, so we really, really appreciate you taking the time, and think I'm speaking for everybody here. We've learned a lot today.
Great, great.
So,
Well, everyone have a lovely day. Thank you.
okay, thanks a lot.